Namaste friends, welcome to another morning of sharing satsang on Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri's holy signs. As always, we'll begin with a chant. Let's briefly focus our attention at the spiritual eye, offering a silent prayer to Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, to Paramhansa Yogananda and this lineage of gurus, asking for their blessings in our lives and to grow ever deeper in our meditation practices. Om Shanti. Welcome again, friends. I had to take a break for a couple of weeks as I was away and busy with a few other things, and we are back again with Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri's Holy Signs, and we are in the chapter, The Goal. This is the second chapter of this book, The Holy Signs by Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, and I think I finished till verse 6 in the last class, and I'm going to read a few other verses from this chapter. I was reading these verses. I don't think, last week I actually felt to read the Sanskrit verse for each of these sutras and then also give the English explanations. Now from verse 7 onwards, there's a lot of concepts that he's explaining, some of which are very philosophical, esoteric. I'm not actually going to read it verse by verse. I'm going to highlight some of the important ideas, and I'm certainly not going to read the Sanskrit verses because there's a lot that he's presenting here. And some of it is pretty self-evident, and the stuff which is not, I don't know if it's necessarily within my comprehension either. So we will do our best to read through these sutras and try to understand the essence of what Yukteswar Giri is communicating here. Now, I'm going to dive right into the English translation of Sutras 7 to 12, and I'll first read the literal translation. Avidya, or ignorance, having the twofold power of polarity, manifests as egoism, attachment, aversion, and blind tenacity. The darkening power of Maya produces egoism and tenacity. The polarity power of Maya produces attachment and aversion. Egoism results from a lack of discrimination between the physical body and the real self. Tenacity is a result of natural conditioning. Belief in nature and her laws is final instead of belief in the all-causative powers of the soul. Attachment means thirst for objects of happiness. Aversion means desire for the removal of the objects of unhappiness. Again, he's presenting a lot of things here, and we will go through a few important ideas here. He describes avidya, or ignorance, and for practical purposes we can just use the word Maya or delusion, which is a concept I'm sure all of you are familiar with and we have discussed enough in the previous sutras of the Holy Signs. And he talks about the twofold power of Maya. And the twofold power, there is the darkening power. I think it is also fair to call it the blinding power. It is the veil that is dropped on us, that confuses our perception. And that has two manifestations. And the polarity of Maya, the world of duality itself, which is what polarizes and creates that intensity of separation, that has two manifestations. So he is describing four manifestations of avidya or Maya, which we all experience, which we are under the spell of. And the darkening power, what blinds us, there are two things that Yukteswar Giri says is blinding to our eyes. And the two of those things are egoism and tenacity. I think the word tenacity itself is very interesting here, the way the verses are translated, because I think it really communicates something that is very practical for us to understand. Now, egoism, as he describes very succinctly, it is basically the lack of discrimination between physical body and the real self. We get confused. We think this is who I am. The I-ness, instead of being associated with the real perception of self that is rooted in spirit, it gets confused and starts identifying with the limited body, with the mind, and with a limited perception of who we are. I am this body, I am this mind, I am these thoughts. Again, we are not talking about egotism or pride. We are not talking about the expression of egoism as we feel sometimes as a part of human personality, but we are talking about the very fundamental delusion where we are confused, where we think, I am this, I am a man, I am 35 years old, I was born in India, I'm good at this, I like this, I don't like that, I'm capable of doing this, I had these life experiences, I'm from this country, I'm from this culture. All of this self-identity is the identity of the body. It's not my identity. And what is the difference? Because the true I that is animating this, the I that I am, is actually rooted in the cosmic self. It is a manifestation of divine itself, but I am not living with the conscious awareness of my own connection with that spirit, but rather I am living in this confusion where I think I am just this body. Easier said than done, but that's how we all come into Maya, and that's how we go through our lives. And tenacity, he calls it the natural conditioning. Again, this is a kind of blindness where belief in nature and her laws is final instead of belief in the all-causative powers of the soul. What is he really talking about? Belief in nature and her laws more than the all-causative power. Basically, this is the kind of blindness that sets in us because we look at the world around us and we think it is all that there is. We subscribe to the idea of linear time. In one of the earlier episodes when we were discussing the Samkhya philosophy, we were talking about space and time and how creation itself manifests. Now, we live with this perception of linear time. We live in this realm where Thursday follows Wednesday, Friday follows Thursday, and cause leads to effect. And that's how we perceive this world. So this tenacity that Yukteswar Giri is talking about is a kind of blindness where we think that's all there is, because we don't understand that this whole realm of space and time itself is a kind of delusion. Again, all of this is not something that we can consciously undo. We are going to come later on in this same chapter when we read some verses. He's just describing, as a matter of fact, the things that we are under, how Maya actually keeps us bound onto this plane. Moving on, he describes the two aspects of the polarity of Maya that affects us. And what are those? That is, attachment means thirst for objects of happiness, and aversion, desire for the removal of objects of unhappiness. Attachment and aversion. Now this is a very, very important concept in spirituality, meditation, the understanding of the Hindu way of life, and many, many things, because this idea of duality and polarity is so fundamental to how we move through this world. And quite succinctly, even as Yukteswar Giri states in a different place, it is the root cause of all our suffering. The reason we suffer is because we are under the spell of this polarity. What is this polarity? Things we like, things we don't like. It's as simple as that. Things we are drawn to, things we are not drawn to. And Today, as you might have noticed, instead of putting a picture of Yukteswar Giri, I put this beautiful brass idol of Ganesha, who is a very beloved deity from the Hindu faith, as I'm sure all of you are aware. And the reason I did that is because I was meditating on and thinking about this verse and this idea of polarity itself. And a lot of Hindu deities, including Ganesha, represent that polarity. Have you ever wondered what Ganesha is holding in his hands? That's why I wanted to put this idol here. He has in his two upper hands, he's holding what are called a noose and a goad, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. In his top left hand, he is holding what is called a goad, and in the top right hand, he's holding a noose. Now, so many of you may not understand what these actually mean. In the Sanskrit language, they are called Pasha and Ankusha. And not only Ganesha, a lot of divine forms hold these two objects in their hands, especially many forms of Divine Mother, Bhuvaneshwari, Lalita, all the goddesses that we worship as an absolute manifestation of divine. Many of them hold the noose and the goad in their two hands. What are these two representing? They represent the polarity of Maya. They represent what Yukteswar Giri is talking about here, attachment and aversion. In Sanskrit, the words that Yukteswar Giri uses, it's very important, and maybe here I'll read the Sanskrit verses because it's helpful. Sukha kara vishaya trishna ragaha, dukkha kara vishaya tyaga trishna dveshaha. Sukha kara, happiness producing, vishaya trishna, desire for those objects, is raga. Raga, I mean, it has a lot of meaning. Raga also can represent a musical form, but in this case, raga means attachment, passion. So, sukha kara vishaya trishna, desire for that which produces happiness for the ego on this plane, that is attachment. And dukkha kara vishaya tyaga trishna, what produces unhappiness, trying to run away from that desire is aversion. So both of these are constantly keeping us bound under the spell of Maya. The reason why these deities are represented with these two objects in their hand is because it is a beautiful visual representation for us to look at, to see God is at the center. And He creates this creation, He holds all of this in its place using these two weapons, or these two instruments, let me say, let's not call them weapons, but these two instruments. But of course, most of these deities, they use them as weapons in the war, if you read stories from mythology, from Hindu mythology. So we are talking about these instruments that the divine uses to manifest creation. There is nothing inherently wrong or tainted in any of this. This is just how Maya works. It's not like we can somehow neutralize or fight these weapons on the level itself. How do we fight this weapon? That's why you have the deity at the center. We surrender to that form of the divine, and we realize these two are just but manifestations of the divine, and the way Divine Mother is controlling this universe. They are not truth. Truth is at the center. Truth is at the feet of Divine Mother. So this polarity, again, I did not explain what these two are. I'm sorry, I'm going on with my explanation. What these two are two weapons or instruments that are used to control an elephant. I don't know how many of you have seen elephants. I grew up seeing a lot of elephants because I grew up in the southern part of India where elephants are fairly common, and every temple has one or many elephants, and I've seen elephants on streets a lot. And I've actually seen these two articles. The goad is something, the person sitting on the elephant, he holds it in his hand. It's basically a very sharp axe. That's what it is. Sometimes artistically it is represented in many different forms, so it can be a little confusing. It doesn't look like an axe, but that's really what it is. It's a very sharp, pointy object. So the medulla of the elephant is where the person is seated, whoever is riding the elephant. So when he wants to control the elephants, when he wants to give an instruction to the elephant, an elephant is a very large beast. It's hard to control. It's not just subservient that it's constantly waiting for your instructions or orders. It's an animal after all, it's a beast. So he can be controlled by pricking with this axe, by asking him to move, by creating this force of repulsion. You give him this dose of pain, and that makes him move. And that's what dvesha is, that's what aversion is that Yukteswar Giri is talking about. You get pricked by something that you don't like, and that makes you move. And what is raga? Raga is that very tough rope when the elephant is back in its shed or whatever they call it. The elephant is tied to the pole with this very, very heavy rope. You see, again, elephant is a very large beast. So how do you control such an elephant? You have to tie a rope to its feet and tie it to this pole, and this rope has to be very, very strong, because if it's not, the elephant can easily break and run away from the shed itself. So the goad makes the elephant run. The noose, the rope that is used to tie the elephant to its shed, keeps it bound. It stops the elephant from moving. So this way, the overlord of the elephant can control what the elephant does. He can make the elephant move when he wants it to move by using the goad, and he can make the elephant stop when he wants to stop by using the noose. So in fact, the elephant itself, in Hindu mythology and Eastern mythology in general, there are two analogies or two images that are commonly used to represent the mind. One is the elephant and the other is the monkey. We won't talk about the monkey now. But speaking of the elephant, even in the autobiography of a yogi, there's this verse, I think in one of the later chapters, perhaps 36, where a chapter called An Idyll in South India, Yogananda in 1935 and 36, he's traveling through the southern part of India and he's visiting many holy places. He refers to the saint named Tayumanavar and he quotes this poem, and the verses in Tamil are coming to me. I can't remember the English translation as Yoganandaji writes, but he starts this verse by saying, it's harder to control, a mind is much, you can control a blind mad elephant, but you cannot control the mind. So comparing the elephant and the mind is a very common image, because elephant is so huge. You look at it and a human person is so small compared to an elephant, so how can you control it? And you control the elephant with a noose and a goad, and these are the two polar expressions of Maya, and using this, Divine Mother, Ganesha, they control us. Ganesha has a lot of obstacles. We are praying to him to help us work on this plane of delusion. Let me have a safe flight to wherever I'm flying with all these delays and cancellations. Let me be able to clear this interview. We are completely working on the plane of Maya, but still we need God's help in order to move through life. So we are praying to Ganesha, who is actually holding the power over this plane of Maya. How does he hold that power? He holds it through the noose and the goad. Now moving on, I'm going to move on to other verses. Verse 13 of this chapter, the root of pain is egoistic actions which lead to misery. Again, easier said than done, but I'll leave it at that. I'm going to move on to other verses because they're pretty self-explanatory. Verses 14 and 15. Man's purpose is complete freedom from unhappiness. Once he has banished all pain beyond possibility of return, he has attained the highest goal. The other verses, 16 to 21, are also an extension of the same idea, so I'm going to continue reading them. Existence, consciousness, and bliss are the three longings of the human heart. Ananda, bliss, is contentment of heart attained by the ways and means suggested by the Savior or the Sadguru. Chit, true consciousness, brings out the complete destruction of all troubles and the rise of all virtues. Sat, existence, is attained by realization of the permanency of the soul. These three qualities constitute the real nature of man. All desires being fulfilled and all miseries removed, the achievement of Paramartha, or the highest goal, is made. And here is where we come to the crux of this chapter, the goal. What is the goal? The goal, as Yukteswar Giri explains here, the highest attainment is existence, consciousness, and bliss. You just have to take his word for it, because that's not how we often feel it. I'm going to be very real as we go through the human experience. Of course, we want to spiritually grow. Of course, we want to be strongly rooted in God and in spiritual life. But as we move through life, we are seeking so many goals, so to speak. What really drives us through life? I don't want to suffer in this way. I want to be in a happy relationship. I want to have just a little more money so I can lead a comfortable life. I want to be able to learn this skill. I don't want to have this particular disease that I'm subjected to right now. I don't want this person to suffer. I don't want this to happen. I want to get this job. I want my son to be married. Whatever it is, somehow all these things, as much as we know, we read the holy signs and we understand this idea of the goal of life, On a very practical sense, these are the goals that we are pursuing, that are driving us. Again, I'm not saying this with any judgment or critique, but that's the reality of human existence itself. And here Yukteswar Giri is just making a categorical statement. The goal that we are all seeking is existence, consciousness, and bliss. And he says, where does he say this? Are the three longings of the human heart. He says that's what our heart is longing for. And our purpose is complete freedom from unhappiness. And once we have attained that, all pain is banished. And that's the goal we are all waiting to attain. That is the essence of creation itself. That's how even Maya works. Because we are all seeking to be happy. We are all pursuing this, this mirage, this this panacea, this happiness that we know to be true, we know to be our own highest potential, but we are looking for it in the wrong place. And we are looking for it in the wrong place again because of those four aspects of Maya that we are constantly subjected to. The blinding aspects that cover our vision, and the polarity that subjects us to wrong action, the aversion and the attachment. So we are constantly under the subject of that, because of which, although the seed is there in us that wants to seek the highest goal, we look for it in the wrong place. We look for it in the next relationship. We look for it in wealth. We look for it in whatever material things we can own. We look for it in comfort. We look for it in happiness that can be attained by things of this plane, by friendship, by relationships, whatever it is that we all want, we all cherish very dearly, the human heart cherishes. All of this is where our energy is channeled, but he's saying our heart was not made for that. It reminds me, of course, I'm sure maybe for many of you also, it reminds me of this quote by St. Augustine, this beautiful quote where he said, "The human heart was made for thee alone, Lord, and it will never find its rest until it finds you." Until the heart finds it, or I think he says, it will always be restless until it finds its rest in thee. The human heart will always be restless until it finds its rest in thee. No matter what we think we want, no matter where it is that we are seeking. Swami Kriyananda, later on in his life, he had this beautiful dream, and he used to make reference to it again and again in the talks that he used to give, especially in the last few years of his life. He had this dream when he was in Italy, and he was watching everybody walking and doing their things, and everybody coming somewhere, maybe a fountain or somewhere in a public place, and he saw mafiosos, that's how he would say it, all these people that are doing very unethical things, and they are murdering, robbing, or all the things that you don't want to be doing, accumulating a lot of bad karma, and saints and everybody else, people that are materialistic, people that are spiritual, and he was watching all of them, and he was seeing that they're all looking for the same thing. And this is an idea that is really, really worth meditating on. We are all looking for the same thing. The person who's murdering somebody and the person who's actually wanting to open his heart and compassion and serve the world, they're actually looking for the same thing. They're just looking for it in different places. They think their actions are going to make them happy. That's why that person wants to kill somebody and this person wants to help somebody. But in essence, they are united in that aspiration of heart, because all our hearts are made for that. And that's what Ananda is. Ananda is the bliss. Our hearts will never find rest. Our hearts will always be restless until it finds its rest in God. And here is where he also introduces this other concept, where he says, Ananda bliss is the contentment of heart attained by the ways and means suggested by the Savior or the Sadguru. Because you see, the power of Maya is so compelling. This polarity, this blindness that we are subjected to is so essential to how we move through this world that we, by our own self-effort, can never come out of it. We cannot extricate ourselves from this plane just by the power of our mind or the power of the ego. We need a savior. I love that word, savior, because we need a guru. We need somebody who has already crossed this plane. We need somebody who has gone to the other side to come and tell us, to come and save us. And that's why the Guru comes again and again. Yogananda says in his poem God's Boatman, I will come if need be 1,000,000,000 times, crossing crags of suffering, as long as one stray brother is left behind. Even if one disciple is left behind, he's going to come 1,000,000,000 times. What a comforting promise, and what a depth of compassion that these avatars have in their heart for all of us, that they keep coming because we need a savior without which we cannot move forward. I'm going to read the last verse of this chapter, Sutra number 22. All fulfillments of his nature are attained. Man is not merely a reflector of divine light, but becomes actively united with spirit. This state is Kaivalya, or oneness. The book itself in Sanskrit is called Kaivalya Darshanam, which means, I don't know how he translated, the way to reach the absolute oneness or the final goal. And here he says, this is the way. The Savior is the way. That's how the Christ is referred to. The Savior is born. That's what we say during Christmas time. The Guru comes, and we need to latch on to that Guru. We need to latch on to the feet of the divine, because this game of Maya is subject to these likes and dislikes of the heart. We are constantly drawn away from unhappiness and drawn towards happiness. Even think about it. I think Swami Kriyananda used to give this example even of a worm. Just this tiny little centipede or something that you see on the ground. If you were to prick it with a stick, it immediately closes down. It wants to run away from the stick. And you put, whatever the centipede eats, a leaf or a fruit or something, it immediately pursues and wants to have its food. Even that centipede, even the little consciousness and awareness that's present in a small insect, it's constantly seeking this fulfillment, this happiness that it wants to pursue, and it's trying to avoid pain. Now, we are much more evolved. We have a very complex brain and a nervous system, but we are essentially the same. Just like the mafiosos and the saints were the same to Swami Kriyananda's eyes. Same only in the sense that they're made in the same essence, not to say that one is obviously closer to God than the other. I'm not meaning to say that they're somehow all just the same. They're same. We are all same in our essence, because we are all expressions of the same divine. And our hearts are all made the same way. They were made to be united with God. I think it's Swami Devi, one of the spiritual directors of Ananda. She often spoke about, and there's even a beautiful blog where she talks about this God-shaped hole. There's this hole in our heart. Just think about it. I think I'll leave you all with this image. There's a God-shaped hole in our hearts. We're always yearning to fill that hole. But we can fill this hole only if we have tried every other possible thing that can fit there. Oh, the ideal relationship, the wealth, perfect health, this, that, living in a big house, going on this foreign trip, going through this experience, inflicting harm on others, maybe this kind of addiction, alcohol, whatever it is, we try to fill that hole with so many different pieces, but the hole is shaped like God, and nothing else will fill that hole. And we keep trying and trying and trying, and we reach a point where we realize, I'm not going to be able to fill this with anything else. I need God to fill this, and I need a Guru to show me how. And that's where we all are. If you're watching this, and if you're interested in even knowing about Swami Yukteswar Giri's holy signs, that's where we are at. We are in this quest for finding out how we can reach the feet of the divine, and we have come to a true Guru in order to learn. So, friends, with that, I'll end this particular webinar and also this chapter. Next week, we'll go to the interesting chapter 3 of this book, which is called The Procedure. So, I'll meet you all next week, again, same time on a Friday morning. Until then, God bless you.